Hi, good evening. Welcome. I'm Ellen Lewis, and welcome to the Crazy for You podcast. I'm so happy to be back in this space. I can't tell you, there's just something very comforting about this. Last week, I tried an experiment. I wish it had worked because it was really fun to broadcast from my closet. I found out that it didn't go well because I wasn't hooked directly up to the Ethernet as I should have been. I was trying to go on Wi-Fi, and that's why everything was a little fuzzy. So I apologize for that, and I may go back and do an episode like that, just record it and have it available, because it was really a lot of fun to kind of talk about the styles we like to wear and how that translates into what we like to knit. So tonight, I want to take that just a little bit deeper. So I hope you're with me on that. Hi, Sandy. It's nice to see you. I'm glad you could be here tonight. Hey, Amelia. Cool. So tell me in the comments if you've really thought about this, since I've been talking about it so much, about translating what you like to wear into what you like to knit, and kind of dealing with the tension between stuff that's fun to knit and stuff that's what you actually want to put on your body for clothing. So be interested in the comments if you want to tell me that. Hey, Rita. Hey, Eveline. Thank you guys for coming tonight. So, okay. So, obviously we knit because we want to make stuff to wear. We want to make stuff that looks nice on us. And even if we don't knit for ourselves, if we're knitting for somebody else, we want to make things that will look good on them. So, I have talked about that a good bit, about, sort of figuring out your personal style in terms of, how much ease you like, what lengths you like to wear, what necklines, and things like that. So I think that's really important. Looking at how much ease you like goes to what size are you going to make? What style you like to wear obviously goes to what kind of a style garment you're going to knit. So, but there's a lot more to it than that. Once you've decided what sweater you're going to make and what size you're going to make, then you have to go and decide about the yarn. And there are a lot of factors that go with choosing a yarn. Hey, Morgan, thank you. Hi, Kathy. Yep. Fun and thought-provoking. Well, this one should be thought-provoking too, because I have pulled some stuff from my closet that I think is very, very edifying. Hey, Gail, Kathy, Morgan. Oh, my goodness. So, yes. I think Amelia struggles with this more than most because she, I think, knits to challenge her brain, and she likes things that are really challenging, really, really fun to knit, but maybe doesn't choose those always to wear. Is that right? Yes, same. I, on the other hand, I don't mind knitting boring garments, because I don't knit to challenge my brain. Okay. My brain is plenty challenged all day long without knitting. I knit to relax. So I like simple things. It's okay with me to knit simple things. Hey, Jal. Hey, Gwen. Let's see. So yeah, Amelia, I think that's a really good point. I think a lot of times garments can seem boring if we don't have some aspect to them that keeps them interesting for us. So that's definitely a challenge. I do know you, darling. I do know you. I know a lot of you. I know what you like to knit. But anyway, it really is important to kind of think about the yarn choices. Sally Melville's is one of my favorite knitters in the world. She's just an incredible teacher, a very, very generous teacher, and a very, very wise woman. And she was here right after I opened the store. I met her at TNNA, and she came and she taught a class on first choices, basic shapes. And she talked about this kind of topic. And she talked about what I'm going to talk about tonight, which is some of the other aspects to fabric and fiber that are really important to consider when you are choosing a yarn to make a garment that you personally are going to wear. And the first one that she talked about was matte versus shiny. And if you read the newsletter, I talked about this in the newsletter as well. She used the example of leather or suede. I like the term, to look at the difference between satin and like chameuse. So I have two garments here that are nearly identical. One is shiny, one is matte. And I want to show them to you because it's subtle but distinct. All right, let's see what everybody has to say. All right. Cotton cashmere. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful matte. I like simple knits and solid colors. Me too, girlfriend. I'm boring as well. I'm good with it, though. You got to own it. All right. Yes. Cool. Okay, good. Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. Okay. So here are two nearly identical garments from my closet. And you can see this one is matte and this one is shiny. Do you see how reflective it is? Right? So very similar in style and print, but one is shiny, one is matte. Oh, where am I going to put you? Okay, and here's another one. I love this style, obviously, because I have two nearly identical blouses. One is shiny, one is matte. Right? So you see the difference, and think about this. Oops. Think about the stuff you like to wear. Do you tend toward things that are shiny or things that are matte? It's a personal preference. Some people will tell you that it has to do with the texture of your skin or and there are a lot of things we can talk about later that have to do with why one might work versus the other, but it's something to consider. And it's one of the first things to consider when you're looking at yarn. So let's look at some yarn that is shiny and some yarn that is matte and the swatches that are done in those yarns so you can see. So I'm going to bring this up. Let's see. The shine gives a more realistic representation of the print or color. Do you think? Isn't that interesting? I think with the animal print, it might just be that that the matte one is a little more, a little fuzzier, a little less crisp, but I don't know. Let's see. Garments with sheen are more dressy. Yes, that's probably true to some extent. Hey, Pat. I think I'm matte, but I like the occasional sparkle. Yeah, okay, so shiny is different than sparkle. And I have some sparkle yarns I may, if we have time, that I will share with you. But real quick, I want to show you this example of shiny versus matte. Okay, so I think I've found just the right camera setup. So I'm super excited about this. So these are both cotton DK weight yarns. And this one is, if for any of you who might be familiar with it, this is Shibui Rain, a now discontinued yarn, and this is Shibui Fern. And you can see that Rain is shiny. Can you see that? Can you see the reflection of it? And Rain, this is Rain, and then Fern is extremely matte. There's very little reflectivity, but you can see that. So let me show you some examples of knitted fabric that are matte. Okay, obviously this is cotton cashmere, and it's very matte. Here's another one. This is Rowan Cashmere. This is a cotton wool blend, very, very matte. Here is a darker color. This is a wool and alpaca blend. Again, very matte. Here's a lace weight wool and alpaca blend. matte. Here's another one with cashmere. This is a yarn called VIP. It's just beautiful sport weight merino cashmere blend. But again, very matte. And then these others, these are shinier fabrics. So I'm going to start with this one, which is so very obviously shiny. This is a 50-50 wool and silk blend DK weight. Do you see that sort of sheen that that has on there? It's a reflectivity that you get with that silk. And I will tell you that fibers like cashmere and alpaca are intrinsically sort of matte, especially cashmere. And as a yarn store owner, I'll tell you that matte yarns do not do as well on the shelf. You know, they don't have what we call shelf appeal. The yarns that have a little bit of a sheen, everybody really gravitates to because, well, hey, shiny things, right? We all like shiny things. And it's really important to kind of get your hands on it and knit it because you need to really, really feel it and sort of think before you make that decision based on, ooh, shiny, what's actually going to work for you. So let's look at some more swatches. Okay, so this is the shiny one. All right, let's see what Morgan has to say. Yes, I think the swatches really help. And Pat, I'm glad you like the camera setup. You know firsthand from the membership and the Moss cardigan what a struggle I've had getting the camera. So yay on this. Okay, so here's another one. This I have lots of samples of this yarn. This is called Moonshine. It's really a beautiful yarn. We love it in the shop. But I wanted to show you that sheen on different fibers and different colors rather. This is kind of a charcoal. I think the lighting here, I have a really solid lighting setup and it might make it, is that better? Yeah, that's maybe a little better. Okay, and here it is in the light gray. Again, shiny, but subtly so, you know. It's not all silk. Here's more swatches of the Moonshine at different gauges. Obviously, we love this yarn. But you see how that is very, very shiny. Obviously not as shiny as others. For example, I have a beautiful, really shiny yarn here that I want to share with you. Where did I put that one? It'll turn up. Yes, here we go. Okay, so here is Moonshine in the skein. You can see that, it does have a sheen to it. And it's very soft. So very pretty, very nice. Yeah, I think this is a really good point, Kathy. Yes, like the shiny in the skein, but what are you going to wear? And yes. Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it, with the matte being more of a fall winter. Yeah, maybe. I can see your point on that. This is a gorgeous yarn, and people absolutely love it in the shop. It's a lace weight silk and sea cell blend, probably the shiniest yarn that we have, which is why I pulled it for you. Very, very shiny, very smooth. It's just so yummy and delicious. But if you're not a shiny girl, that's probably not the one that you want to pick. I have two other yarns that I want to share with you. They are, again, nearly identical, lace weight ivory. This is Rowan Fine Lace, which is a blend of merino and alpaca. And this is Shibui Lunar, which is 50-50 wool and silk. So you can see it really doesn't matter the color. It's not about the color. It's not about the gauge. It's just about the addition of those reflective fibers. And silk and nylon both and rayon are very reflective fibers. Yes, that would be great in a holiday sweater, wouldn't it? Okay. So, yeah, so that's one of the things to think about. I don't think anybody is in a situation where I can't wear shiny, I can't wear matte, but it is nice to kind of know, as Amelia and Nishaya both point out, that you want different textures and different, I'll call them finishes, for different garments for different purposes. I do think that the shine gives it a little bit more of a dressy aspect. Things that are shimmery are a little bit dressier, whereas the matte maybe is a little more, what do you want to say, conservative, work appropriate, or whatever. I don't know. I mean, it's just nice to know so that you can make an informed decision. There's no right or wrong answer. There really isn't. It's what you like. And nobody can tell you, oh, you should be wearing this or you should be wearing that. You wear what you want to wear. Again, you just want to know what it is that you like based on, what you feel most comfortable wearing. So, okay, the next aspect that I wanted to talk about is texture. So we've got 2 yarns here. I'm going to share with you. Actually, I'm going to share all of it with you. Okay, so these are, again, 2 nearly identical in terms of color and weight. And the one is a very smooth texture, and the other one is more textured. This is a tweed. And it's not about the color, it's about the way that the yarn presents. It's much less smooth. So we have, I'll just say it's smooth and textured, right? So I had a hard time finding something in my closet to bring down and share with you because I am so far to the smooth that I couldn't find a single thing that was textured. So I'll just go with the swatches here on the textured. So, and I'm not talking about, the fabric that we're making with it. I'm not saying, a textured stitch, okay? Because we have smooth stockinette and then we have, other stitches that are bumpy, like seed stitch or moss stitch or, rice stitch or whatever you want to call it, linen stitch, that add texture to your fabric. I'm talking about the inherent nature of the yarn, okay? All right, let's see. Denise likes smooth. Yes, I am team smooth. So here is a textured yarn, and you can see what that looks like both in stockinette and in the lace. It's just all over, more noticeable, kind of makes a statement. And yarn can be textured in a lot of different ways. So this is textured in the construction. It has a kind of a bumpy chainette construction. Can you see that? So there's that. And then this one is also textured, kind of a fuzzy way. It also has a bit of a chainette construction. Smoother knit seems to knit more evenly. I think it really, it does, yeah. And yeah. Now here's an example of a yarn that's textured because it has these little nups in them, the little bit of tweed. But I think this knits pretty evenly. All right, let's see, Amelia. Rowan soft boucle would be far to the textured end. Yeah, that pretty much defines texture. Oh, I don't even have a skein of that. Oh, how silly. I should have brought that. But yes, absolutely. Clearly. Okay, so this is textured also. Textured as in kind of a little tweedy effect. This is a Noro, which is also very textured. because it has a thick and a thin aspect that makes the stitches more noticeable. You know, textured yarn says, hey, I'm here. Notice me. This is an interesting yarn. This is Shibui Vine, which is a paper, and it has a really interesting texture to it. A very light fabric. You can see what it looks like when it's not knit here. Very pretty. Here, of course, is another tweed textured. Really notice those little bits. Here's another one that is textured. And then this one, also a textured yarn. And we talked about chainette, and you can see that there are differing variants on that whole chainette thing. So here is a very highly textured chainette. I talked about this a lot in my podcast episode on chainettes. So here's a chainette that's kind of loosely put together. Can you see? You can actually see the knitting of it versus this one, which is much finer, and the fabric is finer. So this is more highly textured as a fabric than this one. So look in your closet. Again, are the sweaters that you have bought or the sweaters that you have knit, are they textured, or do you have mostly smooth finished garments? I mean, you can even look at woven things. There are textured wovens versus, smooth wovens. And you kind of want to see what works best for you, what your preferences are, and what you feel most comfortable wearing. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, let's see. Textured seems more outdoorsy, maybe masculine. Maybe a shipbuilding vine. Yeah, it's a beautiful shibui. Okay, I see. Yes. All right. I getcha. Yeah, I definitely think it's more earthy. The textured yarns tend to be a little more earthy and toothsome, sort of like, the difference between whole grain bread and white bread. One has more going on, and it's just a little more there. You know what I mean? Yes, autocorrect. Rowan Aria. Yeah, that's a beautiful yarn. Much less textured than you might think with for a chainette, but it's so beautiful. Okay, so let me grab the colors that I want to show you, because I want to talk about high versus low contrast. Here's another real quick thing I will share with you. Very textured yarn. This is an example, I think, maybe, Kathy, that you might think, I don't think this is particularly masculine looking, but it is very textured. And I think maybe it's because of the colors, but I definitely know what you're saying on that. Okay, so let me grab my multicolored box of goodies here. Okay, so I like to separate variegateds and colors into, like I said, high, medium, and low or no contrast. So obviously a solid yarn is going to have no contrast. It's all one color. It's dyed, commercially, and it looks exactly the same all the way through. Those are the fibers pretty much that we've been looking at. They all are the same color, and there's no variation to them. When you get into like kettle dyed and hand dyed semi-solids, they tend to be a little different. So let me pull these I wish I could have everything on my desk all at once, but I can't. All right. So in terms of low contrast, this is a variegated yarn knit up. This is a very low contrast yarn. I maybe will hold this up for you to see here. Can you see this? So even though this is a variegated, the colors in there are all the same value. You know, you don't have highs and lows in terms of, you know, dark and light. So a very, very low contrast. Oh, and I did bring garments to show you on that. So this is probably easier to identify, but obviously this is a kind of the ultimate in high contrast garment of black and white. And this would be sort of a very low contrast garment. You can hardly even see that it is a contrasty thing, but very low contrast. So let me get these puppies out for you. Okay, so swatches that are low contrast. I'm going to have a mess up here. Okay, so heathers tend to be low contrast. This is a heathered yarn, and you see it's sort of the fibers are all sort of blended, and they're not that different in value. So it's very subtle, even though you can see that there are different colors in there. This is a low contrast example of a Noro. So this is a Noro with a low contrast. This is a hand-dyed. Again, a low contrast. You can see that there are different shades of the color in there, but they don't look really different. Semi-solid, again, hand-dyed. You get the idea, right? Going through these. They're low contrast. And this is an example of a different yarn that is also, it's not a hand-dyed, it's not a tweed. This is a variegated, but it's a very, very low contrast. So this is also a low contrast, variegated. See, you've got purple in there and you have teal, but they're the same value. So it doesn't make your eye kind of jump around, if you know what I mean. Oops. So then our sort of medium contrast, something like this would be sort of a medium contrast. There are some lights and darks, but it's not so crazy that your eyes are hurting. These are both beautiful examples from Monos. These are Monos Silk Blend. Again, kind of medium contrast. Some hand dyes or kettle dyes can actually be medium contrast as well. This is a Malabrigo that has probably more contrast than you might expect from, you know, a semi-solid, because you have those very light places against the very dark. And then a high contrast fabric is going to look like this. So this is a very high contrast fabric. You see, you've got a lot of lights and a lot of darks, you know, very, very lights and very, very darks. In the skein, when you're looking at it on the shelf, you want to say something like this would be kind of a low contrast. Well, medium maybe. The light is making this look much lighter than it is. This is really not very light, but you see it's not a play of super brights and super darks. Whereas this would be more of a very high contrast. You've got whites here And you've got these very kind of dark ochre tones. And then right here with the speckles, you have, black and white basically together, which definitely gives it that high contrast effect. This one's pretty high contrast as well, but very pretty. So that's more about, when you're choosing a variegated, or if you're going to use that for a garment, you really want to think hard about that, because color is such a big piece of what you're knitting and what you end up wearing. And this is the point of the newsletter article that I did about that dress that my mom bought me. The contrast in it was too high. There was white and black and cobalt and pink, and I just don't wear that. It just doesn't suit me. And the Noro garment that I was mentioning, I'll share that with you, is this. So this is Noro, but pretty low contrast relative. I would say this is a medium contrast yarn. So not that really high contrast. Here's another example. I want to show you this because I think this is really interesting. This is also sort of variegated, but can you see that? So there's red and there's black in there, but again, low contrast. So what do you guys think? Are you high contrast or low contrast? Let's see. Yeah, it's easier to see that with the swatches than in the skein. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so hard to see in the skein. This is an example of what I call a fairly low contrast yarn. The colors are all sort of muted and kind of grayed, which I like. again with the boring. Yeah, low contrast, low to medium. Okay, so I think that's really interesting. And I know you guys already know this because you're telling me in the comments whether you're high or low or not. And I love that you know that. I think that's so fabulous. I think there are still a lot of people who maybe are not sure or struggle with that. And I would never in a million years tell anybody you should wear this, you should wear that, or you should not wear this, or you should not wear that, because that's not my business, right? You can wear whatever you want. But I did find a book that I have found absolutely invaluable. It's really interesting. It was recommended to me by a colleague that I had, and I bought it, and it's called The Triumph of Individual Style. And she talks about all of these kinds of aspects in there. And I think it must be the book that Sally Melville had used, or maybe she'd been exposed to her. But it talks about, whether you as a person and your coloring is high contrast or not. And I think this is probably the most relevant piece to what we're talking about tonight in terms of color, is that if you look at me, my hair is light and my skin is light and my eyes are light. I'm a pretty low contrast person. Whereas if you look at Ginny Stein, who has very fair skin, but this lovely, very, very dark hair, she's a high contrast person, and she can wear those more bold, high contrasty kinds of things. Whereas I tend to dress all in one color, and it's probably pink or white or black. You know what I mean? So if you're struggling with, high contrast, low contrast, or, any of these other kinds of things, I think the book is a very cool resource. She's got stuff in there that I think is maybe, I'm not sure, but I like it because she doesn't say, if you have this shaped body or this characteristic, you should wear this. What she says is, if this is a characteristic you have and you want to highlight it, do this. If you want to minimize it, do that, which I think is so empowering. And I love that. Another thing that she talks about is like texture. You know, some of us like obviously very smooth things. And she talks about that in terms of like the texture of your hair or the texture of your skin. You know, if you have, my hair is really straight, so I probably too much texture is wrong for me. So I don't know. It's interesting, but I would be interested in hearing what you thought about that. So let's see what everybody says. Okay. Pat is low. Gwen, low. Amelia, low. Kathy, low to medium. Denise, medium. Terry, high contrast clothes for summer wear. That surprises me, Terry, because you are so fair, you know. Terry is just beautiful, and she has this beautiful platinum blonde hair. She's lovely. Kathy, does contrast have to do with saturation? Okay, that's a really good question. So it has to do with the comparison of this saturation. So you could be all in a very saturated color, but you might not want to pair that with white or something else, or you wouldn't want to knit something out of a yarn that had lots of highs and lows in terms of the color if you were a low contrast. Do you see what I'm saying? So again, this jacket, this houndstooth jacket is high contrast because you have two different colors of two different values of colors in there. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's the contrast. Nishaya, high contrast. All right. Like you, low contrast except Noro. All right, yeah. And Noro comes in different levels of contrast too. Like this sweater is a low contrast Noro. I like medium, high contrast for. So yes, absolutely. Jal makes a great point that these crazy fun colors with, you know, lots of stuff going on, they're so interesting and so compelling that, you know, they're perfect for little things like the mittens or a little hat or an accessory or something, but they can be overpowering if you are not comfortable wearing, you know, a real high contrast thing. Let's see. Yes, sometimes it's very hard to tell what a yarn is going to do once it's knit up versus in a skein. It's a thing you kind of have to train your eye to look for. And the point in this, you know, in this podcast and in the writings that I've been doing about it is not to tell you, you know, this is what you should be doing, but just how to think about yarns and colors and textures and such when you approach them in the store in consideration for a big project. Depends on your mood. Oh, I love it. That's fun because you know what? Clearly I've got different stuff. We wear what we want, right? Yeah, good point. And socks. Yes, socks are terribly fun. Anyway, so I hope that this has been helpful for you guys and that you've enjoyed it. So I would love to chat with you later on if you want to talk about a yarn that you have or a yarn that you're considering for a given project, whether you should use a high contrast or a low contrast or a textured yarn or a shiny reflective yarn for a given stitch pattern or a particular garment is the topic of an entire another episode. But this is just sort of trying to think about if you're making a large scale garment for yourself, some things that you might want to look at and consider for that going forward. So it's been fun. I've loved talking with you about swatches and yarn and all of this. So thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time. Good night.